the brain, when you understand how that works, then you start to say to yourself, this makes total sense. Of course, I need to operate it that way. And then you go down the track of starting to operate it the right way. And when you do, your life turns around and you start to see much better results in your life. And you start saying, oh, I wonder how that happened.
Well, welcome to the True Man Podcast. Now, I have a hunch we are going to have some fun with today's topic because we're going to talk about how to use your brain the right way. Now, it's been my casual observation, and I say this jokingly, of course, but it's been my observation that a lot of people don't have a brain to use, it feels like these days. But for those that do, how do we get to use this little noggin and get it working properly? For this, we turn to someone who knows. So welcome to the show today, Liam Naden, to the podcast. He's written a book called Let Yourself Off the Hook. He has a podcast under the same name, and he's a speaker, teacher, and coach. And he's going to share with us how to use our brain the right way. Liam, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Hi, Mike. Thanks very much for having me. Pleasure to talk with you.
Absolutely. You know, my first question has to be, what was it that even caused you to go down the path of trying to figure out how to use your brain the right way?
Yeah, well, it's a really interesting question. And what it makes you realize, and we were having a little bit of a chat before we went live, and you were explaining how unexpected things were happening or had happened to you in your life, which had sent you in a different direction. And you, as you said, they turned out to be good things. So I guess the question we have to ask ourselves is really, what actually causes the things that happen in our life? I mean, how is our life? How is it the way it is? Why are we living the way we are, doing what we're doing with the events that happen in our life? What's the cause of all of this? Because we're all busy trying to figure life out, but while we're doing that, it's almost like unexpected things are really what shape our life.
Yeah.
And, this was what really my life was all about, because from a very early age, I was always very driven. My mother used to say that. He's very driven, she used to say, but as a little boy, because I always wanted to have a great life. And I always wanted to figure out, how can I be better? How can I be have a great life, a really exciting, adventurous life? I don't want to just have a mediocre, get by sort of existence. I want to have I want freedom and money and all those things.
Right.
I want to have a great life. So I spent most of my formative decades, if you like, trying to figure this out. How do I be successful? How can I be more successful? And I went through lots of different ways of doing this. I studied religion. I studied spirituality. I went down the whole self-help, motivation, personal improvement field, and I was the sort of person that I would go to anything and I would learn anything I could if I thought it could help me to understand more about how to be more successful. So I was the guy. I went to all the seminars. I read lots of books, tons of books. I did courses. I devoured anything I could to try and answer this question, how to be the best that I can be, which is really what I was looking for. And, I achieved a lot of outward success, and I became an entrepreneur in my mid-20s. I set up my first business, and it was the first of many businesses. I've had about 18 different businesses in my life so far.
That's a fair number.
Yeah. And I achieved a lot of outward success. I became a multi-millionaire, and I was doing all these great things, but something happened to me in my mid-40s that should never have happened, because here I really thought I was an expert on how to make my life work. I had all my goals written out. I was repeating all these positive statements. I'd studied how the subconscious mind works, and you can change your beliefs and change the way you think, and you can be a positive achiever. I was super motivated. I'd go after every opportunity that I could to make more money or improve my life in some way, be more healthy, be more spiritual. I was doing all of these things. So here was I, the expert on success. I could quote you any book, any teacher, whatever, about how to make it all work. But then in my mid-40s, something happened that it's one of those unexpected things that makes you think, I don't have the answers, because I went from being a successful multimillionaire to losing everything. Virtually overnight, I lost everything I had, all my possessions, my businesses, my family, everything. And I ended up becoming homeless, and I had to move in and sleep on the sofa in the living room of the small apartment where my elderly mother lived. And here am I in my mid-40s. And it's like I had absolutely nothing. And it was a huge change, a huge
Yeah, I was
shock.
going to say, what did that feel like, to feel like you had the world in the palm of your hand, and then the next thing you know, you're sleeping on your mom's couch?
Well, I think the overwhelming feeling, apart from all of the stress and pressure that I was under, because I had people constantly ringing me for money that I didn't have. And but aside from all of that, I think the overwhelming feeling that I had is utter confusion. And I remember two questions that I kept asking myself as I went through this period. And my mother's sofa wasn't the most comfortable bed to lie on, so I had plenty of time when I was awake at night.
Yeah.
But two questions that kept coming up to me, and one was, why has this happened to me? I mean, I thought, I'm not only a good guy, I am a good guy. I've always tried to do my best. But the thing is, I know everything about success. I know how to achieve goals. I know how to do this stuff. And yet this was never on my goals list. So why has this happened to me? As it says in the Bible, what have I done wrong? I'm at fault here. What's happened? So I didn't really have an answer to that. And the second question, which I also didn't have an answer to, is, what do I do now? Because I had no clue. I had no idea what to do. I was in a town where my mother lived, that I'd actually had lived in that town years before, but I had no friends. I had no contacts. All my businesses had gone. I had no money, obviously. And I thought, I tried to figure it out. I tried to work out, what am I going to do? How can I get back on my feet? And I just came to the conclusion, I didn't know. I had no clue on what to do. So those were the two questions. So as I say, I was in the state of confusion, and along with everything else, stress, fear, worry, frustration, anger, bitterness, if you like, that why has this happened to me? It shouldn't have happened to me. But anyway, the interesting thing, and to answer your question that you asked earlier, and this is the short answer, but basically how I came to understand or think about things differently was when I started to pull myself out of the situation, which obviously you do. It took a while, a few months, but eventually I could move out from my mother's living room, and things started to get better. And I started to make money again. I started to set up the first of which was several new businesses. I actually found a new romantic relationship, which was amazing compared to the relationships and marriages I'd had before. But anyway, things started to go really well again in my life. And I was starting to earn really good money again. I was starting to have the freedom to do things that I wanted to do. And I was really enjoying my life. But with some really fundamental differences about what I was doing and how I was feeling this time around compared to my life earlier. And this got me really concerned to think, I need to find out what's created this difference, because it was night and day, the difference. And really what the difference was before my old life, yes, I was successful on the outside. I was making money and, having the freedom. I had things that I owned and things that I could do that many people would say, well, you should be really happy about that. But the thing I also had then was a lot of stress, a lot of problems, and this feeling all the time that, yes, I'm sort of successful, but I don't really feel that successful. There's more to my life. I'm thinking, is this all there is? I'm not there yet. I have to set bigger goals. I have to really chase after and find and figure out what I need to do to achieve more in my life. So that was what I used to be like. But this time around, if I was to say that I was chasing after success in my previous life and it was causing me all sorts of problems, or I had lots of problems and stress and frustration along with the success, this time around, it felt completely different, because instead of me chasing after success all the time, this actually felt in a weird sort of way that success was chasing after me. Because what was happening was, instead of me struggling and trying to figure stuff out and trying to make things work, things, sometimes we might call them luck or coincidence or synchronicities or chance events, but whatever it was almost like things were happening to help me to really be successful and achieve what I wanted. So, for instance, people would show up. Maybe I remember meeting someone I hadn't seen in 30 years, or no, 20 years. And we recognized each other. It was just out of the blue. And he gave me an opportunity to do something that really helped me in my life. And all of these things were happening. And what I was doing was, I was a bit puzzled and confused as to why it seemed so much easier in a way. I mean, I was putting in a lot of effort, but there wasn't the struggle and there wasn't the problems and stress. And I remember waking up one day and saying, my life is great. I don't, I'm really doing all the things I love to do, but I don't have the stress and problems. And that made me realize that I had to figure out what I was doing differently, because I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want to go back to the old life of struggle and problems. And that led me down the path to realize there's a fundamental difference between struggle in life and success in life. And that is about how we operate naturally in this natural biological world that we're a part of. And that all comes down to the most natural thing we have, which is a brain. A brain is a physical, natural, biological organ, machine, that's designed to have us live in harmony with the world in which we are a part, rather than struggle and fight against it all the time.
I commonly say to people, they'll ask me, what do I do? And this is going to lead me into a question. So I help guys get out of their head and into their heart. So I'm curious, because we're talking about the brain. I consider the heart the kind of the little brain. How do you connect the two, or do you?
Well, essentially what I've realized about the brain is there are 4 parts to your brain, and they all have separate functions. But what causes all the stress and problems for people in their life is that they're using the wrong part of their brain to try and make their life work. So all of those things that you're talking about, thoughts versus heart, in the model that I explain and the way I've researched it, this is all actually to do with how you use your brain. It's expressed through those feelings that come through your heart, or it's expressed through those feelings of stress and frustration. But these are separate brain functions. Because here's the thing about the brain, and this is the thing that I'd overlooked all of those years of trying to figure out and trying to struggle, is we are, as I mentioned earlier, we're part of a natural, physical, biological world, and that overrides everything. I mean, the laws of nature control us. For instance, and we can be praying, we can be motivated, we can be changing our thoughts, we can be determined, we can be strong, we can have spent years changing our thoughts and beliefs to say, when I walk off a 10-story building, I'm going to fly up in the air. Now we know that's ridiculous. You can do all of those things. You can be convinced, but gravity is going to be above all of that, and the law of gravity, you're going to fall to the ground. Yeah. So it's the same with, we need to recognize that there's a biological way things work, and if we're not in harmony with it, we're going to create problems. And if you were to ask any biological scientist, what is the overriding purpose or function of all life, including our own life, every scientist is in total harmony, or they're totally unanimous that the overriding thing that drives all living things is the need to survive. Mm-hmm. Everything is programmed to survive above all else. And what that really means is, when you think about it, is when something is programmed to survive, the better it is, the healthier, the stronger, the more in harmony with itself that it is, the better that it is, the greater the chance it has for survival. So in a very real sense, we're all programmed. Every living thing is programmed to be the best that it can be so that it has the greatest chance for survival. Now, for humans, that doesn't just mean physically the best we can be. It also means mentally and emotionally, which means feeling good, being happy. We're biologically programmed to be happy because when we're happy, physically, we have the greatest chance for survival. Not only do we function best physically in our body, but we come up with better ideas. We're more creative. We're more resourceful.
Yeah.
We're more motivated. So we're biologically designed to be happy because being happy and being fulfilled is what gives us the greatest chance for survival.
So here's a question for you. If we're programmed to be happy, and I may be speaking about the United States here, because it seems like if we're programmed to be happy, why are we also damn mad?
Very simply because we're not using the happiness machine the right way. Now, it sounds silly. Is that why you're laughing? This is scientific. I'm not talking about any silliness. We can talk about how the brain works to see this is all and the funny thing about this is all taught in the Bible as well. The Bible, because when I started to research, I thought I've heard all this before, and the Bible tells us in very, very specific terms the way we're supposed to use our brain to make sure that we live the best life possible, which is our biological purpose. Because you see, every living organism has been given a machine, a mechanism to ensure that it is the best that it can be, that it does have the greatest chance for survival. And that's what a brain is. All that the brain is a machine designed for one thing, and that's to make whatever organism it's attached to have the greatest chance for survival by being the best that it can be. So for humans, our brain is designed to make us happy and to ensure, because as I said, when we're happy, we're going to fulfill our biological purpose. We're going to survive the longest when we're happy. So your question as to why people aren't happy, it's nothing to do with the machine. It's to do with the way it's being used. Because one analogy I use is a motor car. And everybody knows what a motor car is. It's just a machine. I mean, it doesn't have any particular mind of its own. It's just there to do one job. It's programmed to do one job, which is to take you from where you are to where you want to go. And it's going to do it predictably, reliably, guaranteed. You don't need to worry about it, think about it. It's going to make it happen, provided that the person driving it is driving it the right way. Because if they're not driving it the right way, it's not going to do its job. And it's the same with the human brain. I mean, can you imagine with a motor car, somebody doesn't know anything about a motor car, but they're told they've never seen one before, and they're told, that's something that'll take you over the hills anywhere you want to go. And someone looks at it and goes, well, I have no idea how it works, but it's got wheels. Perhaps the way to use it is to get behind it, stand behind, and push it along. And that's what they do. And they get behind and they're determined and they start pushing. And what happens? Nothing much. It's a real struggle. They don't get very far. And they get tired and exhausted and they feel, well, this is really frustrating. This isn't working well. And then they think, I know the problem. I'm not motivated enough. I haven't prayed enough. I'm not strong enough. I need to become more determined. I need to build up my muscles. Maybe I need to change my shoes into better shoes. And they keep trying and they try harder and harder, but it simply doesn't work. And at the end, all they end up with is being very unhappy, very stressed, and they create problems in their life. It affects their health trying to put all this energy in. So so when they realize, however, that it's a machine that it's not designed to be driven that way, there's a specific way to drive it. And when you do that, the machine's going to do the job. The machine is going to get you to where you want to go, which is what it's supposed to do. So that's all you need to do, is to realize that the brain is exactly the same. And here's a really strange conclusion you come to when you realize this. You realize that all problems in life are simply caused by using the machine the wrong way. If your brain is designed to make you the best that you can be, living to your highest potential, if it's not doing that, you must be using it the wrong way. And if you're using it the wrong way, what happens with any machine? Problems show up. You know, you drive a car the wrong way, or you put the wrong fuel in, it's going to create problems. And it's the same. Problems are simply, on a logical basis, when you think about it logically, they're simply a reflection of the fact that you're not using the machine the right way, because your brain is designed to ensure you don't have problems in your life. Problems don't help you survive. So that's really the thing about the brain, is that we need to understand it is a machine. It's got a specific job to make us the best that we can be. And all we need to do is figure out how to use it the right way, and it's going to do its job.
Where do, setting goals and that type of thing, having purpose, where do those things come into play in terms of using our brain properly?
Well, that's a controversial one. And maybe I should preface it by explaining how these 4 parts of the brain work. Because,
yeah, that would be great.
Because when you realize this, one thing that struck me as very, very obvious and unusual is the fact that goal setting, at least the way most people are doing it, doesn't work. And in fact, in my work, and I don't know if you do this as well, and it's well documented, but if you'd ask the average person like I do when they come to ask to work with me, and I say to them, what percentage, do you have goals? Is the first thing I say. They say, yeah, of course I've got goals. I've got them all written down and I'm working towards them. I say, okay, now let me ask you a question. What percentage of the goals that you've ever had in your life would you say that you've actually achieved? Now, is it 100%? And they look a bit confused by the question. No. All right, is it 90%? No. 80%? 50%? No, I never achieved 50% of all the goals I've set. I'm struggling to achieve them. The figure that's accepted as to what percentage of goals actually get achieved, between 2 and 3%. That's the success rate for people setting goals. Now, you have to ask yourself the question, you have to be honest and say, why is everybody doing something that only has a 2% or 3% success rate? Now, either one of, it's a bit like if you go to a heart surgeon and you say, I need a heart transplant, what's your success rate? If he said 2%, you'd say that person doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm not going to go to them for my heart transplant. So it turns out that the truth is most people are setting goals the wrong way, which is why most people aren't achieving their goals, because the whole way you set goals is determined by how you use your brain. That is the key. It's not about, but I'll explain it in a bit more detail if I share the 4 parts of the brain and how they work. Because when I do this, people go, and I have this all on my website in like a diagrammatic form, people go, it's like a car. I finally, instead of me trying to push it along, I finally get it. It's so simple. And then you go, I've heard this before. It's in the Bible. It tells us exactly how to use our brain. But anyway, I've created a model, which is a unique model on 4 parts of the brain. Now, these are all physical, different locations to your brain, and they've all got scientific research and scientific terms to establish. Yes, these are 4 different regions of your brain that are located in 4 different places inside your head, and they've all got completely different functions. And it's how those functions are used that are going to determine what happens in your life. So anyway, the 4 parts are, the first part is what I call your rational thinking brain. Now, it has scientific terms. It's the neocortex, which is and it's located on the top of your head. But your rational thinking brain, the purpose and function of this part of your brain is to take all of the information that you gather throughout your life, in every moment of your life. So everything you experience through your 5 senses, every idea, every piece of information, it's taken into the rational thinking brain and it's stored there. This is like a library or a database of everything that you know, everything that you've learned, because you can retrieve that information later to help you, help you communicate with other people, help you to label things, help you to understand and make sense of things that are going on in the world. But that's what your rational thinking brain is designed for. As I say, it's a library or a database of all your knowledge, not all knowledge that exists, but all your knowledge, the things that you've picked up. And there's a big difference, which we'll talk about. The second part of your brain, which is located just below your rational thinking brain, this is what I call your emotional feeling brain. And it's pretty obvious what this part of your brain does. This is responsible for how you feel. It creates chemicals which determine how you feel on a moment-by-moment basis. So whether you feel great, wonderful, happy, loving, grateful, excited, or whether you feel stressed, worried, depressed, afraid, angry, these are all created by your emotional feeling brain. Now, the third part of your brain is at the back of your head. It's located mainly in the brain stem, and it's what I call your survival brain. Now, your survival brain, again, as the name suggests, it's pretty easy to see this, but basically your survival brain is responsible for managing your life in every moment to make sure everything that needs to happen happens so that you survive. So without you having to think about it, obviously. So this is all your bodily functions, your breathing, your heart rate, your organs, the processes of your body. These are all happening without you having to worry about it or think about it, because it's all managed by this part of your brain, your survival brain. Now, there's another really important functional part of your survival brain, and this is to do with when you're faced with a threat or a danger. In other words, something that comes along unexpectedly into your life that might harm you physically or could even kill you. And when that happens, and if you think back to when the human brain was first formed and it was a dangerous place, there were lions roaming around, perhaps. So we created, or the brain created, this survival weapon or tool, which is sometimes called the fight or flight response. And what that means is that when your brain recognizes, through another process, which we probably haven't got time to talk about, but your brain recognizes there is a danger in your environment that shouldn't be there and could hurt you or even kill you, it activates this, the survival brain activates this fight or flight mechanism so that you deal with the threat. So if it's a lion coming towards you, you're going to run away, or you're going to shout for help, or get ready to fight, whatever it is. This is a reaction. This is, if you like, a response, a weapon, a tool to get rid of an immediate threat, something that's about to harm you right there and then.
Right.
So that's really important. Now, the fourth part of your brain, now this is what actually the Bible talks about a lot. And science is catching up with spirituality and religion and recognizing this is a very separate physical part of your brain, but this is the master part of your brain. And it's the part I call your creative brain. Now, your creative brain is really what runs your life, or what's supposed to run your life when you are being the best that you can be, when you are fulfilling your biological purpose. And your creative brain, what it contains is, as the name suggests, your creativity. This is where your imagination comes from. It's where your intuition comes from. It's where you get those gut feelings and those aha moments. It's when you wake up one day and you suddenly get this new thought about a solution to a problem, and you've never thought of it before, or a new idea. It's the part of your brain that gets you to see opportunities, sometimes that you hadn't seen before. And it's also the part of your brain that includes your motivation. This is the thing that gets you to move and do the right things and not do the wrong things, because it knows all the answers. This is a much higher intelligence than your thinking brain. It's way beyond your thoughts. Artists, musicians, composers, people, creative people, this has been described throughout history. For instance, composers have often said, they've been asked, well, how did you come up with that music? And they say, I don't know. I just heard it and then I just wrote it down. They don't know where it came from. It didn't come from their thoughts. They didn't sit down and say, I'm going to write a concerto today and this is what it just came to them. Athletes, peak performers talk about the state that they're in, where it's almost like effortless, where they're achieving way beyond what they normally do, but they're not putting in the struggle. This is all the creative brain at work. This is very different to the thinking part of your brain. And interestingly enough, this part of your brain also is designed and will manage your environment for you. So it literally brings to you things that you might call luck, coincidence, synchronicity. They are not that at all. They appear to be like that when you're in a limited brain state, when you're not using this creative part of your brain the way you should be, and where you can see the totality and the reality of everything, and you think, oh, it's just luck, and I can't have that happen every day. That's what it appears like, but it's not reality. The reality is this is all managed by your creative brain. So here's how it all works. To be the best that you can be, and science has a word for this called homeostasis, which means the perfect functioning of the organism. So that's your natural state. It's the state of all other nature, is to be the best that it can be, function as well as it can, and have this brain ensuring that it is functioning as well as it can. In other words, achieving this state of homeostasis. So the way you're supposed to live your life is you're supposed to be in that state most of the time, all of the time, making the right decisions, good things happening, not, dealing with problems, knowing the answers to things, coming up with great ideas, being your unique self, and which is being the best that you can be. That's the way we're supposed to live. However, there's only one time we're not supposed to live like that, and that's when the lion comes running out from the jungle, from behind the rock. And what happens on a biological level is that your brain suddenly says you need to switch from this creative brain state, and you need to activate your survival brain state to deal with that threat or the problem. But what actually happens when you do that is that your brain switches its focus from making sure everything is right for you to be the best you can be, to getting rid of this threat, this danger. And it literally shuts down your creative brain. It doesn't need all of those resources. In fact, it not only doesn't need the energy, it might need the energy that is normally being used for that part of your brain. It might need that energy as well to help you fight off the danger, to give you more energy to run away from the lion or to fight it or whatever. But here's the problem. So essentially you have a life where you can either operate from your creative brain, being the best that you can be, all the good things happening, intuition, creativity, imagination, resourcefulness, problem solving, all of those things. You can operate like that, or you can be fighting off a threat or a danger. Those are the two choices. And what actually happens is your brain decides which part of it's actually your emotional brain decides which part of the brain is going to operate for you. And the way it gives you a signal, or the way it switches which part of the brain, is through emotions. And what it does is, when you feel gratitude, happiness, love, appreciation, all of those good things, it activates your creative brain, because it's saying everything's safe. You can be the best you can be. You can just let go and allow things to happen and enjoy your life, and everything's going to work out perfectly. So feel good. However, if it sees that there's a threat or a danger, it sends a signal in the form of a chemical to make you feel the emotion of fear. Fear, stress, worry, and anxiety. And what actually happens on a biological level, whenever you feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety, or any of those related emotions, your brain is switching off your creative state and activating your survival brain. That's what it's doing, because it's telling itself there's a threat to your survival. But the point about your survival brain, not only is it only designed for one thing, which is to fight off an immediate threat, it's looking for it. It's suddenly going, where's the threat? Where's the problem? Where's the danger? I know it must be here because the emotional brain is telling me. But it shuts down all your resources, all of your creativity, your imagination, all of those things. And what's the problem? Most people are using their survival brain to try and manage their life. And that's not what it's designed for. So they're in a state of fear, worry, anxiety, stress, all of those things. And they're trying to set the right goals. They're trying to figure out what to do with their life. They're trying to solve problems. They're trying to manage their life. And they're using the wrong part of the brain. And that part of the brain, it's like a little child. It's only there to fight with sticks, the lion that's coming along. It doesn't know the answers to any of those things. It doesn't have access to the information and the resources that the creative brain does. So it keeps the person in the state of confusion, a state of frustration, worry, anger, which perpetrates in saying, why isn't my life working? And look at all these terrible things that are going on in the world. So it's a cycle of making people feel, where we feel worse and worse because we're so stuck, and we don't realize that it's this part of the brain that is going to keep us stuck. We're not accessing the part of our brain where all of the answers actually lie. And this is why, as I say, people not only stay stuck, but this is the problem with goal setting, because people are saying, I'm so unhappy. I don't know what to do with my life. I need to get out over this. I need to solve this problem. I can't do it. How can I be happy? And if you ask a 10-year-old child what you need to be happy, it says, well, I don't know. But if you keep asking it, it's going to give you some silly answer to try and get you off its back. So it's going to say, well, all right, you need to be rich, or you need to have a really happy marriage to this person, or you need to solve all these problems, but it doesn't know the answers. So in a very real sense, it's fear that is keeping us blocked and stuck, because it's activating the survival brain, which is not designed for any of this good stuff, and it's blocking the creative brain. And when I started to really understand this and realize this, one of the things that occurred to me was, I've heard this somewhere before, this thing about fear. Where had I heard it? The Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible says 365 times, one day for every day of the year, once for every day of the year, these three words: be not afraid. Be not afraid. Now, that's not just a night. It's not saying, I try not to be so worried, everything will turn out right. It says, be not afraid. This is an instruction, because when you activate your fear, when you are afraid, you shut down your creative brain. You shut down the part God has given us to say, this is the part I've given you to have the best life possible, so that you survive for the longest and have an enjoyable life. That's what you're here to do. That's the part I've given you, but you're shutting it down when you feel fear and afraid. It's like it is a switch.
It's interesting, Liam, because when something's mentioned, 300 sometimes in the Bible, there's a reason, and it's something that we need to pay attention to, and it's God saying, "Hey, over here, pay attention." And I think what's interesting is, we're definitely in a time and a place where people are operating from a place of fear, and it's causing complete chaos in their life. And they seem content to, a lot of people seem content to just sit and spin in it, strangely enough. And I guess my question is, how can we move from fear and really begin to tap into that creative space? I know when I'm in that creative space, I'm feeling good. The juices are flowing, and I like that space. Now, there are things that come along and try to, life happens and that tries to knock you out of that state. But how can we tap into that state on a more, I don't even know if this is the right word, more regular basis?
Well, I guess, religion, spirituality, and lots of people have described what you should do, but they don't describe how to do it. And that's the problem. And what you should do is you should let go, allow, not worry about what's going to happen. As it says in the Bible, do not worry about tomorrow, for it will take care of itself.
Yep.
It also says, do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, and wear. They'll all be provided for you, as they are provided in the rest of nature. And they are provided in the rest of nature, and we're part of nature. They're supposed to be provided for us as well. So that's what you should do. But the reason we don't do it is we don't understand how it works. We don't understand how it works biologically. So we think we have to rely on faith. But most of the time, for most people, sadly, faith isn't faith. It's just grim determination and hope. And we really hope that things will work out. And we say we believe that it will, and we say we have faith, but we don't really, because I think the reason we don't have faith is because faith only really comes when you have some understanding. I mean, it's a little bit like you're driving a lot. Most of our life operates on faith, and it's not because we're stuck in this idea that, oh yes, everything's going to work out. We're in the state of hope. We just know that things work the way they do. We know that when we're going to carry on breathing, we know our heart's going to keep beating. We know the sun's going to rise tomorrow morning. We know that when we drive down the road, the cars coming the other way aren't going to hit us. They're going to stay on the other side of the road. And all of these things, we might not understand totally how they work, but it's beyond just a hope. We just know that's just the way it is. And what I've found with the brain is, once you start to understand these concepts, firstly about what your biological purpose is and how you're wired biologically to be successful, to be happy, and not to have stress and problems. And then you understand how this thing, that the machine that's designed to keep you in that state, the brain, when you understand how that works, then you start to say to yourself, this makes total sense. Of course, I need to operate it that way. And then you go down the track of starting to operate it the right way. And when you do, your life turns around and you start to see much better results in your life. And you start saying, oh, I wonder how that happened. I wonder how that person came up into my life. I wonder how this opportunity, this situation, this idea, this thought, I wonder, and it's all wonder why my life's turning out so much better. And then you go, I understand. This is how I'm starting to use my brain the right way, and I'm starting to get the results. That's predictable. It's just a machine. There's nothing fancy about your brain in the sense that it's designed to do one thing, which is to make you the best that you can be. So when you start to develop your understanding, that's when you really start to make progress. And that's what we need to do. And the main thing we need to understand is that fear is our enemy on a biological level. And people say to me, it's all very well for you, Liam, to come up with all these ideas, don't be afraid, and you don't need to be afraid, and there's nothing to be afraid of. I've got this terrible world I live in, all these bad things happening, all these problems that I have in my life. But it's a little bit like saying, if someone comes along to you, or when people say that, of course, it's because they don't understand what fear is actually doing to them, what's creating fear, and the fact that it's going to keep them stuck unless they do some things to get rid of it, which is what I teach and probably what you teach as well to a large degree. But here's the thing. It's a bit like if someone came up to you and said, drink this liquid that I've got in this glass here. And you say, well, what is it? And they say, well, it's hydrochloric acid. And you say, what? And they say, yeah, just drink this. And you say, well, I'm not going to drink it. If I drink it, it's going to harm me. It's probably going to kill me. And the other person says, no, look, don't worry about it. Just believe it'll all be fine. And not only that, if you don't drink it, I will guarantee that your life will fall apart. You will lose all of your friends. You will lose your family. You will lose everything that you have if you don't drink this glass of hydrochloric acid. Now, you're still going to say you're not going to drink it. You're going to say, look, I'm sorry. I don't care what the justification is, what the reasoning and the argument is for me to drink it. I know that at the minute I drink it, it's going to negatively affect my life. And that's what fear is. Fear is something that if you experience, it's going to experience it. It's going to put you into survival state, and it's going to hamper your life rather than help you. So you realize that your only mission is to eliminate fear from your life, and it can be done. And this is what I spend my time showing people how to do, because it's our natural state is not to live in fear. We've just been created from the day we were born. We've been brought up with all of these ideas and all of these habits and all of these beliefs about who we are to tell us that we live in this limited world, that we should be afraid. There's so many things to be afraid of. And that's what's keeping us stuck and not seeing and using our brain the right way.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Zach Williams has a song called Fear is a Liar. And I really believe that. Now, I will say this. And I can't honestly say I even know why. One of my great fears in life is a fear of heights. If I'm watching even a television show or a movie and somebody's on a tall building and they, one of those scenes where they're standing on the edge of a building, I automatically look away. I feel my hands get sweaty. Fear sweeps over me, and I'm not even the one standing on the building. I mean, it's to that level. And I know my brain is lying to me in that moment. I'm safe. But yet this fear of heights is just so real to me. And so now that's just one that I have, which is kind of interesting. But overall, in the everyday life, what I see going on is I see fear surrounding us. I see people not taking chances in their lives because they fear success or they fear failure, one or the other, or maybe both. And I see fear has really crept into our culture in a very negative way. And it seems more prevalent now than it ever has before to me. Real level of skepticism in the world today. And I can only attribute it to fear. But at the same time, I know that fear is going to hold you back. And by the way, it doesn't matter. I'm always going to be fearful of heights. I'm not even going to bother to work on that one. I got other things I'll work on, just not that one.
Well, research has discovered that actually biologically and genetically, humans are born with two fears. One of them is the fear of falling. So that's actually a genetic thing. So you shouldn't be to blame yourself for having that fear. The other fear is of loud noises. So those are two fears, the only two fears that are wired into us biologically. Every other fear that we have is the product not of our biology, but of our environment, or of how we interact with our environment, and fundamentally of our perceptions and what we've trained our brain to be afraid of. Because your brain is trying to protect you. It's trying to do two things: either make you the best that you can be all of the time, but when it thinks that you're faced with a danger, it's got this fight or flight reactive response to get rid of that. But your brain is making the decision all the time on what is dangerous. And what it's making the decision on is all of the stuff you've been putting into your head from the day you were born, telling you what's dangerous in the world. So, for instance, your wife comes along and tells you that they want a divorce. Now, what does your brain do with that? It has to make a decision. Is this safe or is this dangerous? Because this part of your brain is constantly deciding whether it's safe or dangerous to determine which part of your brain is the appropriate part to be using in that moment. So your brain goes through, it actually happens in your emotional brain. That's the decision maker. And it goes through into your rational thinking brain, and it looks for any information that could help it decide whether your wife telling you that they want a divorce, whether that's safe or dangerous. And it goes in there, and what does it find? Things that you've seen on television about people having terrible divorces, or all of these TV shows about telling you how the only way to live are these wonderful, happy families that never have any problems, and this is how life should be, and it's all perfect. Or maybe your own parents or people you've heard of have these terrible experiences. So your brain says, that's a threat to your survival, your wife telling you they want a divorce. So it activates. It makes you feel stressed, worried, fearful, afraid, anxious, and it activates your survival brain. And when you do that, you do all the wrong things, because this is just a reactive. It doesn't know how to solve that problem. It doesn't know how to get your wife back or lead you to a better marriage, which might be what you're really supposed to be doing. It doesn't know how to do any of those things. So this is what keeps you stuck. So this is what we need to realize, that when you feel fear, worry, or stress, it's not about what's actually happening in your life or in the world. It's about what your brain is allowing you, or what your brain believes about what is happening. It's a really powerful distinction to understand. And when you know that, you can go to work on getting rid of fear out of your life. And there are two ways to do that. Have we got time to cover this?
Quickly, yeah.
Two ways is to stop doing things and exposing yourself to stimuli that make you feel bad. Now, you don't have to watch the TV news. You don't have to talk to that person who makes you feel bad. You don't have to have that conversation. You don't have to have a relationship or a job, or you don't have to have anything that makes you feel bad in your life. Because if you get rid of it and stop feeling bad, your brain is going to bring you the stuff you're supposed to have in your life, your creative brain. And the other thing you need to do is you need to start teaching your brain the difference between a real threat to your survival and an imaginary threat. Stop seeing lions running around the place when they're not there. That's the key.
Yeah, well, that's why I brought up my fear of heights. It's one thing for me to go to the Grand Canyon and get within 15 yards of the rim. It's a whole other to see a movie on television and think I'm gonna die. I mean, just not gonna happen. But Liam, what a great conversation. I mean, the biggest thing here, I think that the human body is just amazing. It is absolutely amazing, and I think gaining understanding of how your body works is really, really important to having a quality of life and achieving success for sure. But before we leave today, and of course, I'll put all this information in the show notes. Liam, tell everybody, how can they get a hold of you and get more information from you?
Well, the place to find me really is on my website, which is just my name, liamnaden.com. And in fact, if people are listening at the moment, I've got a webinar that that people can sign up for, where I go into a lot more detail about, but in interesting detail, not dry science, about how your brain works, and more importantly, how you can actually start seeing some results really quickly by using it in a different way. And that's all on my website, liamnaden.com.
I will put that in the show notes. Liam, thank you for being with me today. And it was fun to hear about how the brain works and how we can achieve some success.
Thank you so much, Mike. Been great talking to you.
You bet. Take care.